Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this edition of The Comeback Kid. I am your host, Ben Friedel, and alongside me today are Nate Wiggins and Matt Hendrickson, as always. What's going on, you guys? How you doing?
I've been better.
Yeah, it's been that kind of week as a American sports fan, that's for sure. What about you, Matt? How you doing?
I'm doing better than Nate. I'll tell you that. I've been doing some yoga, and I'm starting to feel loose, pretty rested. What about you, Ben?
You know, I'm doing good. It was an exciting week of playoff baseball, and but of course the inevitable did happen. So I think we're just gonna have to jump right into it. So, but before we do that, what is this show about, guys? What is this show about? So basically, every single Monday at 9 a.m., we hope to talk about sports and stories that may not get enough attention on major sports networks. This includes baseball, NHL, and as of last week, MLS. But and Nate and I have been discussing this at length. That may not be a continuing theme, at least in the interim, because some sour feelings after last Tuesday sort of developed within me. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. So, most importantly, we on this show want to talk about the sports that we want to talk about, and hope that we can both inform and inspire the listener at home. So, I've been alluding to it for the first couple minutes here. Last Tuesday was a sad day in America. The U.S. men's national soccer team failed to qualify for the World Cup for the first time since 1986. I have no words, really. I mean, we set aside 20 minutes to talk about it, so I will have words at some point. But, Nate, you went down to O'Brien's Pub. You were there with the San Diego American Outlaws faithful. There were some soccer celebrities there as well, if I am correct with that. And you got to see the hopes and dreams of a nation dashed before your eyes, live and in person. How are you feeling? How are you feeling, man?
Pissed, embarrassed. Yeah, I was at the pub, and like you said, two American soccer legends were there. I got a chance to meet Eric Winalda, former U.S. men's national team player, scored 34 goals for the national team, and scored the first goal in MLS history. And Paul Caligiuri, who in 1989 scored the goal in Trinidad and Tobago that sent the United States to the World Cup, their first World Cup since 1950. But just getting to the match, I mean, just what a terrible performance. Like, it was all set up for the United States. All they had to do was go down to Trinidad and Tobago and just draw. Like, they didn't even need to win. They needed to draw against the worst team in the group, a team that had lost 9 straight qualifiers, had absolutely nothing to play for, and they looked so terrible. Like, Trinidad and Tobago had nothing to play for. The USA had everything to play for. But if you watch that match, it looked like Trinidad and Tobago was a team that was playing to go to the World Cup. Mm-hmm. Like, it was just mind-boggling to me how these guys can come out and be so lethargic. Like, Anyway, getting to the match. Before the match, the tactics from Bruce Arena were just, I don't know what he was thinking, coming out with the exact same lineup, in the exact same formation as he played Friday in Panama. Like, I don't understand the thinking behind that. You come out, you know the pitch is going to be, it's going to be a wetter pitch, so why is Darlington Nagbe, whose speed is he's better to play on a faster pitch, why is Darlington Nagbe starting? Why don't you have Alejandro Bedoya out wide? Why is Michael Bradley by himself in the middle? And once you saw Michael Bradley struggling in the middle by himself, why didn't you bring in Kellen Acosta or Dax McCarty? I don't understand what Bruce Arena was thinking. Like, is he watching the match? Like, what is going on in Bruce Arena's mind? I don't get it. I don't understand why they came out in the same formation when against Trinidad and Tobago, you know that the way to beat them is you need to pack the midfield. So why are you coming out with four men in the back and just Michael Bradley by himself in that defensive midfielder role? Why aren't you coming in with 3 at the back and 5 midfielders? I don't understand. Like, honestly, I felt like I could have managed the team better than Bruce Arena did on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. It was just terrible.
Yeah, it was really bad, and we were talking at length earlier about this when we were prepping for the show. You mentioned to me that you're feeling a little. I want to say, I guess, sad for some of the veterans on this national team. People like Omar Gonzalez, Tim Howard, because that could have been their last. Correct me if I'm wrong. Competitive national team match.
Yeah. This is that was definitely the last meaningful match for Omar Gonzalez, for Clint Dempsey, for Tim Howard, and it's really a shame that Tim Howard. How are we going to remember him? Are we going to remember him for the 16 saves against Belgium, or are we going to remember him for letting in 2 goals that he should have saved against Trinidad and Tobago? Yep. How are we going to remember Omar Gonzalez as one of the best defenders in U.S. men's national team history, or for that own goal against the U.S. in Trinidad and Tobago? How are we going to remember Josie Altidore? He could go down as the number 1 goal scorer in U.S. men's national team history, but people are going to remember him for A, always getting injured at the World Cup, and B, in this match against Trinidad and Tobago, when he lost the ball in the midfield, he was just walking back. Like, he wasn't even hustling. It looked like he didn't even care. And I'm like, come on, Josie. I listened to an interview at the beginning of the World Cup qualifying cycle way back in 2016 about how Josie Altidore was saying, man, I'm really excited for this qualifying cycle because of the fact that he was injured in 2014. So if it really meant this much to Josie Altidore to get back to the World Cup, it didn't look like it on Tuesday. And not only for some of the veterans am I feeling bad, but some of these younger guys who could put a slow down their careers, because there are players that use the World Cup as a launching pad. DeAndre Yedlin used the World Cup in 2014 as a launching pad to go from Seattle to Tottenham and then on to Sunderland and Newcastle. This was going to be I thought okay, Christian Pulisic, if he has a good season with Dortmund and then goes on to have a very good World Cup, he could end up leaving Dortmund during the summer. But now we have to wait until 2022 for Christian Pulisic to play in a World Cup. It is just so unbelievably sad. It is just, man. And then also another guy I was feeling bad for was Dax McCarty, because he's been one of the better players in MLS over these past couple of years, and this was his chance to finally play at a World Cup, and now he's not going to get a chance to do it because by the time 2022 rolls around, he's going to be too old. So it's really a shame. But I mean, these guys, the opportunity was there and they couldn't get the job done.
They really couldn't. And then this is a systemic problem. Really shows how weak our soccer system is, and I think that we've been fooling ourselves for the past 2-3 some odd years, where soccer has really been booming in this country, and we've been creating an illusion for ourselves that we're better than we are. And this problem starts from the top down. You were mentioning to me that the U.S. operates our soccer development and system way different than other countries do. Can you explain a little bit of that to our listeners?
Yeah, so here in the U.S. we have the system is called pay to play. And I mean, what it is in order to play soccer, in order to get into these development academies, and in order to get pretty much into the U.S. soccer system, or to get a coaching license, it's expensive. And the reality is that we are the only nation where it's like that. In other countries, it doesn't matter. Your socioeconomic status doesn't matter when it comes to, if you're good enough, they will find a way to get you into these development academies. They will find a way to get you into the player pool for the national team. They will find a way. But here in the United States, it's, you may be the most talented player in your city, but if you don't have the money, oh, well, sorry, too bad. And that overwhelmingly shuts out Black and Latino players who, they may be the best players. They may be the best players in their neighborhoods. They may be the best players in the city. They may be the best players in their county, but they're shut out from the U.S. soccer system because they don't have the resources to play. And it's until the United States gets rid of this pay-to-play system, we're going to be miles behind the rest of the world. Miles behind. And, there's, Bruce Arena was resigned a couple days after the match. I thought he should have resigned immediately after the match.
In the post-match interview, just right there, yeah.
In pretty much any other country, if something like this happened, the manager would have resigned right there. I believe the manager for England, don't quote me on this, but I believe after they lost to Iceland, he resigned on the spot. I might be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure he did. So Bruce Arena resigned. I think it was 3 days later. Didn't really come as a surprise to anybody, but to me, the bigger problem is Sunil Gulati, who's the president of the U.S. Soccer Federation, and I mean, he's done some great things for soccer in this country, but I think the time has come where he needs to go. Gulati out, get him out of here. But he took a conference call last Friday, and he said, "I take full responsibility for this, but I'm not going to resign, and I'm planning on running for re-election." How could you take full responsibility for something, but then not resign? I don't get it. Like, to me, I feel like Gulati thinks that, like, oh, I'm the reason that soccer is so popular in this country, you know, and he has this just inflated opinion of himself that's so far removed from reality. Like, it is ridiculous.
It really is, and my perspective on this whole thing, what the heck are we doing? Oh my gosh, like, I didn't even watch this match. Because, for one, I had class. And two, I just assumed that everything was going to be fine. And I think that everyone else really just assumed that it would be okay. There was a 94% chance to qualify into the main draw before Tuesday's match. And at least making it to, like, a playoff. So, like, if we drew that game was an even greater percentage. And it's missing out was just unprecedented. It was on, I don't think it was on any of our minds that it could have gone the way that it did, because this result was also determinant on results going on in other countries simultaneously. The match in Mexico, it had to go a certain way, or else, you know, that had to go perfectly, and the dominoes just had to fall just right. But regardless of that, we shouldn't have even been in this position to begin with. A nation the size of the United States is not going to the World Cup, and you have countries like Panama and Honduras who are now either straight into the World Cup or at least in a playoff. We couldn't even do that. Players from Panama and Honduras only dream to come play in the MLS in the United States for higher wages, better life, and they showed so much more heart than we ever did during this whole entire qualifying. And last week, all three of us sat here on this show, and I think, like many Americans across the nation who were predicting what would happen on Tuesday, we thought, this is it. We're playing the worst team in the Hex, and we have this. Our ticket to the World Cup is punched, and we predicted that the U.S. would go in. All three of us will, you know, acknowledgingly raise our hands saying we got it wrong. But, like, who could blame us? Who could have predicted that this kind of thing would happen?
I mean, 300 million people in the United States, and we can't put together a winning group of 11. I think that says a lot. But it seems like what we have in U.S. soccer is a difference in what we expect versus what we can actually produce. As American fans, we expect our team to qualify. But maybe that speaks a little bit to our arrogance and how we might be setting lofty goals for a national team whose domestic league, the MLS, is only 20 years old. And arguably, we cannot produce a contending national team by itself from MLS. So 95% odds, 94% odds, hoo-ha odds of qualifying aside, should we really expect to qualify in the World Cup when most representatives for other nations are coming out of various European or South American leagues?
So like I mentioned prior, or like we mentioned prior, there's many systematic problems going on. Bruce Arena was a huge problem. Sunil Gulati was and still remains a huge problem. But my personal opinion, and Nate has choice opinions in opposition to my own about this, was that former United States national team head coach Jurgen Klinsmann, he was a terrible coach. He really was. He didn't really do much for us, but I do think that he did get one thing right, and that is his opinions about Major League Soccer at this point in time. I think we, as Americans, have been fooling ourselves into believing that MLS could develop and maintain U.S. national team talent. And I hope that one day it's able, Nate, I see you over there. You're fuming, man. You're fuming. I hope that one day, and I predict that one day, MLS will be one of the top leagues in the world because of the direction that it's going. It's growing fast. It is becoming a more and more exciting league to watch because the level of play is growing more than ever. But when every 4 years your immediate goal is to get a team into the World Cup, you need to bring the best of the best. In my opinion, you can't be bringing players who are playing in a league which is competitive, but a league that isn't as competitive as many in Europe, such as, England and France and Spain. The leagues overseas have a different level of competition and mentality, I believe. And the MLS has its whole reputation of being a retirement league. That's why, and we saw Kaká retire last night, and let's face it, for the past year he hasn't been a serviceable forward for Orlando City, and that's just a testament to some of the stuff that goes on in MLS. It's just they're giving these washed up players a platform to just ride off into the sunset, and then we have our actual United States men's national team players playing against this kind of competition, and it doesn't make sense to me why we aren't prioritizing young players such as Emerson Hinman in England, such as Lyndon Gooch in England, who are these young players who are getting, really amazing competition overseas and not giving them a chance in the team and taking preference over these players who play domestically. All right, Nate, come at me. Go for it.
So I have a question for you. So when MLS players who play for the U.S. men's national team, when they play well, is that like when Josie Altidore plays well, when Michael Bradley play well, is that a testament to their experience in Europe? Like, are they playing well because of their experience in Europe, or what's the reason for that? I'm going to ask you that.
I believe that they wouldn't be where they are today without their experience in Europe.
See, I agree with you there, but here's where I think you're wrong, Ben. The goal of MLS's goal is not to develop players. Their goal is not to develop players for the U.S. men's national team. Because if that was the goal, then there would be no need to go out and sign these big time DPs. They're designated players. There wouldn't be no need to go out and sign a David Villa or a Kaká, because you could just be, okay, let's just develop a young American into not the next David Villa or the next Kaká, but let's just develop a young American to be to be the number one player on our team. But see, that's not the goal of MLS. The goal of an MLS team is to win an MLS Cup. The goal is not let's develop American players. Right? You gonna say something?
So where do the players develop then? Because if they're developing overseas and their goal is not to develop here, why would they come back?
Well, I'm not saying that their goal I'm not saying that that's not a goal of MLS. What I'm saying is that that's not the number one goal of MLS. That the goal, it's not. All right, so hold on. These are the top 10 players. The top 10 players from MLS. The top 10 players of MLS this year: Sebastian Giovinco, David Villa, Albert Rusnak, Miguel Almiron, Clint Dempsey, João Plata, Roman Alessandrini, Lee Win, Diego Valeri, and Victor Vasquez. Those are the top 10 MLS players this year. 2 of those guys are Americans, and only one of them is actually in the player pool, Clint Dempsey. If the goal of MLS was to develop American players, then we would see that all the best players in MLS would be American. But the reality is that's not the case. These teams aren't here to develop American players. These teams are here to win. That's why Toronto FC goes out and signs Giovinco, because they're like, hey, here's our opportunity to win. So I see what you're saying, that, and I'm not here to say that MLS is on the same level as the Premier League or the leagues in Europe. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that it's important. I'm saying is that MLS is not the reason why the U.S. failed to qualify for the World Cup. They're not the reason why.
So obviously this discussion is getting nowhere. So we're just gonna wrap it up here. It's not like we don't have 4.5 years to talk about this. So
yeah, I believe you're right, Matt. We may disagree sometimes, but Nate, I respect you, and I sadly look forward to having this conversation over the next 4.5 years, because that's the next time we're going to see the United States play in a World Cup match. So when we come back, let's talk. It was a busy week in baseball. The playoffs are underway. It's been a dismal MLB playoffs for teams entering as favorites in a year for resurging teams. So stick around and we'll be right back to talk all about it. Stay tuned.